Hello everyone and welcome. Today what I have planned for us is a little clarification video. I want to come back to this topic that I brought up in a video where I mentioned that I had discovered a slight crack or a delamination in my steer tube. And in that video I talked a little bit about how I didn't think that the compression plug should be part of the structural integrity of the steer. And based on some of the feedback I received in the comments, I wanted to clarify what I meant by that, because I think some interpreted that what I was saying is that I didn't think that the compression plug was part of the entire steering, a structural component of the entire steering system. So I just want to clarify that point, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense of what I meant. So for those of you who don't know anything about what a compression plug does, I'll give you a quick explanation so that hopefully this video will make some sense to you. So in a bicycle with a threadless headset, you have a compression plug that goes inside the steer tube. And what this does is, once it's slotted in or slid in here, there's a Allen style hex bolt in here, and there's a slotted aluminum tube that has a knurled finish, and there's a conical style washer down here that's threaded. And when you tighten this down, when it's inside this tube, it puts a compression outward on the steer, and then what that does is it locks in to the steer, and so that way it can't pull back out again. And that's important because when you put this steer into your bicycle head tube, you have bearings that are pressed into the head tube. And what this will do is this will sit inside those bearings, and then you will put your spacers on. You'll stack your spacers on to whatever height you need, and then you'll slide the stem on top of that. And then you have a compression cap that goes on top of this that also threads down inside the compression plug. And when you tighten that, what it does is it pulls the steer up, and it pushes the stem down onto those spacers, and it compresses everything together, and that preloads the headset bearings. And that's important because you don't want the headset bearings to be loose. So that's how a threadless headset system works, and that is what this compression plug is for. And what I was trying to say in that video is that I didn't think that the compression plug should also do another job, which is to reinforce or to strengthen the steer itself. So this plug, I've heard people say or read in places online that this plug needs to be longer than the actual stem, where the stem is clamped on to the steer. It needs to be longer so that it can reinforce the steer tube. And why you would need that, or why they think that, is because in order for the headset compression to stay preloaded, you have to torque these stem bolts down. And the torque needs to be set to, well, in this case it's 5 Newton meters. And that pressure is pushing against the steer, which is then being resisted by, in their view, this compression plug. But they're also saying that this compression plug is reinforcing the steer when you're riding your bike and you're going down the road and you hit a big pothole or something, and all your weight shifts forward onto the handlebars, and in turn it's pushing downward on this stem, so it's creating a large bending moment or a torque on the steer. And in their opinion, this plug is somehow going to help resist some of those stresses that are occurring inside the steer tube. And what I meant in that video was that I don't think that a steer tube should rely on this piece to reinforce the steer itself. My opinion was that the steer should be strong enough to resist those forces without that plug. and that the plug itself should only be used to preload the headset bearings. So I don't think I made that very clear, but I wanted to address that in case there was any question. And I showed you an example of this steer and how it has built into it a metal sleeve that's inside the steer, and that's designed to strengthen it. And this particular fork does not have the metal sleeve inside to strengthen it. And so this style fork requires a plug like this, whereas this style of fork uses a star type. I wouldn't even call it a plug, because in this case it's just like a washer that's kind of gripping the inside. It's a threaded washer essentially, or a nut, you could say, a star nut that goes inside that grips to the inside of this metal sleeve. And so that's how you would preset the bearing with this. So it does not use one of these. And probably one of the biggest reasons of why I think this should not be increasing the strength of the steer is because if you go to a bike shop one day, you might decide to swap out the stem. You might decide to switch out other things. Maybe this is broken for some reason, or it's corroded and you've had to take it out and replace it. And all you have in your shop is something like this. As you can see, that one's a little bit shorter. This one's quite a bit shorter than this one. And so somebody might decide, hey, this one should work. They go ahead and put it in. They reinstall the stem and torque it down, set the bearings, torque it down, and then you're out riding one day, and if the steerer needed this piece to provide the strength to reinforce the steerer, but it's not long enough and does not reinforce this area down here, and that causes it to break, in my opinion, the steerer was not designed properly to carry the intended loads that it should. So that's the point that I was trying to make. So I hope that helps clarify what I was saying. And anyhow, if you guys, look at that, I slid the stem down. If you can see this, but I slid the stem down, and a piece of carbon on this steer just, look at that, just by sliding the stem on, a piece of carbon just delaminated. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit more about this steer tube soon. I've got another video planned where we're going to dive a little deeper into this carbon steerer. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, hope you all have a nice evening, and we'll see you soon.